what if it happens in our nation? And you can tell that it's stirring up fear in individuals, or it's stirring up thoughts, and it's really getting people to think. Because think about it, what's going on in Israel? Well, what have they been saying all along? Israel first, America next. Israel's the first Satan, Israel's the little Satan, America's the great Satan. And now, interestingly, the thought had crossed my mind too. We were having the conversation the other night about, okay, here this has happened in Israel. They've gotten over the borders, infiltrated into the nation and stuff. What if in America? Look what our administration is doing with the borders of America. And we know that there's already been terrorists that have crossed over our borders. So it's a very real thing for people to be thinking about. And and then interestingly, I don't know how many of you saw Flashpoint last night, but here you have Michelle Bachmann saying the same exact thing. She brings up the same exact question. Look what our administration has done with our borders. Look what's going on all down, Texas and all down through there and stuff. All the people that have been allowed to flood over our borders into this nation. And Michelle Bachmann brings that up. We see this happening in Israel. What if in our nation? And that's a good question to ask. That's a good thing to be thinking about. But, I just wanted to bring up Israel before I got into my Bible study, because, we need to make sure we're keeping Israel in the forefront of our thinking all the time. We should be anyways, but especially now. We've got to be standing with Israel like we've never stood before. And we've been hearing all along about how, this is Israel's 9/11. Think about it. You think about all the people that were all the Americans that were lost in our 9/11 with the population that we have. And then you look at the population of Israel and all the people that have already been killed in Israel, over 1,000 people, through an evil that is just unimaginable. Evil has no rules they play by. It doesn't play favoritism. Evil doesn't care if it's a 2-day-old baby or if it's an elderly person. And you hear all these awful, inhumane things that are taking place in Israel. Just beyond words, beyond thoughts, beyond feelings. And when you think to yourself, how can one human being do this to another human being? And it's because of the evil, the insane, the stupidity on the part of these people who don't think that Jewish people are people, that don't think they are lives. And they are. They're just as much as you and I sitting in this room. And you hear all the stuff that's been going on. They coming into kibbutzes. And they finding, going into a kibbutz, it just happened today. IDF goes into a kibbutz and no adults around, but they find 51 babies decapitated. How many? 41? I thought it was 51. But they find this amount of babies decapitated. How would anybody with a heart or a breath in them to be able to do that? Let alone you do that to an adult, but to a baby, and I'm not saying that it's okay to do that to an adult, not at all, but to a baby, and and all the awful stuff, the hostages that have been taken, the just shooting them and just murdering them like they don't even matter, all because of sick evil, all because of evil, and you have to and there's so many videos that are coming out and stuff like that. And, you don't know if you should be in a place of walling before you watch the video, or if you should just be in a place of being vulnerable. And I would say that you got to be in a place of being vulnerable to watch the videos. Don't try to wall, because that will make you harden to what's going on. And you've got to have the heart and compassion to what's going on over there. And we've got to fight back. Now, I know I said to Jordan the other day, it's like, it makes you want to take up arms and go over there and fight. Me, anyways. It really does. It stirs that up in you. How can we just be back here in America, safe, not dealing with this, when they're going through what they're going through right now. You know, it makes you just want to be like, you know what, I'm going over there, I'm going to help them do something. Now, obviously, I know we can't, but we can through decreeing and declaring. You know, like Jordan led us on Sabbath. You know, the power of the word is more powerful than weapons. The power of the world is more powerful than any evil terrorist. And you know, and what does terrorism do? How do they able to do what they're doing so much? What's their number one weapon? It's fear. Terrorism is a reason why it's called terrorism. It's to instill terror into people. You instill fear into them. And what do we know that fear does? Fear paralyzes. And it causes a person not to be able to act, not to be able to think clearly. It causes people to just kind of like be a puppet and not know what to do. Fear can cause people to make totally wrong decisions. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because, like I said, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But you know, in the midst of everything that's going on in Israel, and we can't be quiet. If you're out there and you hear somebody saying opposite of what we believe when it comes to Israel, well, Israel deserves this, or what does it matter, or it's, you know, what about the Palestinian people? You know, we need to be bold enough and strong enough to stand up and say, you know what, and speak the truth, regardless of what may happen. We've got to stand with Israel more than we've ever had before. You know, and it's just, like I said, all the awful stuff that we've been seeing taking place. But in the midst of all the awfulness, you know, there's good. And there's, you know, good will triumph over evil. But you just see the bravery and the courage and the tenacity in the Jewish people. And if there's any people on the face of the planet that have a do not quit attitude, it is them. A do not give up attitude, it is them. And they will prevail in this war. They will win this thing, and it will be done quickly. All those people that don't think that that Israel's going to make it, that they're going to be wiped off the face of the earth, whoa, you better change your thinking, and you better not be in that place, because Israel will win this. Israel will win this, and they're not going to give up, and they're not going to quit. And they have all us and others behind them, supporting them and being with them, especially in prayer. But you know, like I was saying, all the good and stuff like that, just the tenacity of the Jewish people. You know, we were talking about, and I had seen it yesterday, the day before, but you know, the older Jewish woman who has these terrorists come into her home. You know, 5 terrorists come into her home, and for 15, 20 hours, she's serving them a meal. You know, she's serving them food and serving them cookies. And her statement is, you don't want a hungry terrorist because they're dangerous. Hungry terrorists are dangerous, okay? That took some, what is it, chutzpah? That took some chutzpah, okay? No fear. They're good example of no fear. Good example, I would say, and she knows who her God is and trusting him. That took some chutzpah. I don't know if I know too many people that would do something like that. And she's feeding them cookies. And what happens? The IDF come in and eliminate all 5 terrorists. And I believe it was because of that woman's chutzpah. It was because of her faith. It was because of what she was doing and didn't allow fear. Because when the enemy sees fear and it sees that you're acting on fear, that's when the enemy has you. So there's stories like that rising up all over the place. You know, that woman was like, yeah, you go, girl. You know, that was just such a good story. And even the other ones, you know, Jordan sent me the picture earlier of the 95-year-old man, okay, called out of reserves, and he puts on the IDF uniform and is going to fight for his country. He's going to encourage, what's that? Goes to encourage. He's going to encourage the IDF soldiers. You know, 95 years old. You know, and it's like people like that, the Jewish people rising up and being like, no, we are not giving up. We're not going to quit. I was sharing with some people earlier about a story that I had gotten emailed to me today, and I was going to print it out and ran out of time. And but it was of an IDF soldier, and I don't know if he was a commander or whatever, but when this whole thing first started, he found himself, he got the call and stuff, and we know how long it was taking for the alerts to go out, because they're celebrating, they're towards the end of Sukkot, and it's Sabbath and all that. And in his tank by himself in his tank, was able to fight off hundreds of terrorists, hundreds at the border, and was able to save people's lives. And they're calling him the second Kahalani. Is that how you say it? That's what they're calling him. Just acts of bravery like that. And it's just amazing. And that's who the Jewish people are. That's who they are. That's what the nation of Israel is. We have a lot to learn from that nation. We have a lot to learn from the Jewish people. But anyways, I just saying all that to just make sure we're keeping Israel in the forefront of our thinking. They got to be there every single day. We need to be decreeing and declaring. We need to be standing with them, and we need to be, if need be, publicly standing with them and sharing. But I brought that up because of what I said I was going to be talking about with being fear. And, with things that are going on in Israel and things that we're seeing in the world in general, it is stirring up fear from the enemy and people. And so we got to know and learn once and for all how to put fear in its place. I found some stuff from Kenneth Copeland had emailed me. Well, not personally emailed me, but I get Kenneth Copeland email. And interesting, I think it was yesterday or the day before, whatever, he had sent out this thing on fear. I don't think it had to necessarily do what was going on. I think it was just the timing of it was the same. But so I had pulled that up. But before I get into that, like I said, I just want to address fear, because we really have got to put fear in its place. But we got to put it in its place with a little different angle, because we know, fear has no place in the lives of believers. We've been taught this from mom and dad for a long time. It has no fear. Fear has no place in the lives of believers. And we know how fear, it can just easily sneak in. And on any turn, it can sneak in when it comes to your health or your family, your safety, possessions, but it doesn't belong. Fear does not belong in a believer. The devil knows it, but he'll always try to get you to take the bait. He'll use things like bad reports, discouraging thoughts, a negative word from a coworker or a family member, and unpleasant circumstances to get you out of faith and into fear. But we know that we can defeat fear and experience the shalom of Yahweh. And I kind of went on a little rabbit trail with all the whole word shalom, and I think at some point we're going to do a more thorough teaching on just exactly what shalom is, because there's so much in the word shalom. So we know how, shalom, the Hebrew word for peace, it's so rich in meaning that it cannot be adequately translated into a single English word. We know here that shalom means to be complete, to be whole, to be sound, life and wholeness, nothing missing, nothing broken in any area of our lives. Complete shalom, complete peace. But shalom also means to live well. So when you hear somebody saying shalom, 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 they're saying to you, live well. Live well. It's a lively phrase that suggests a spirit of vitality. Shalom is prosperity, good health, a complete state of well-being of the individual and the community, in the material sense and in the spiritual sense. It signifies relationships between individuals, between families, but especially between Yahweh and his children. And that's available to us. And when we get out of fear and we enter into shalom, we're untouchable. We're completely untouchable. And so when I'm talking about fear tonight, not a lot of them, but a good amount of the scriptures that Yahweh gave me, like I said, keep Israel in the forefront of your thinking. These scriptures are for us, but these scriptures are also for Israel. They're about Israel. And they're good to jot some of these down so you can decree and declare them about Israel. But so, fear. Well, what exactly is fear? It's an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or threat. It's the threat of harm, real or imagined. Now catch that. Fear is the threat of harm that's either real or that's imagined. You know, how many people imagine a fear? That's what most of fears are. It's imagined. And a lot of people imagine the fear. How does the Bible define fear? Well, you see it first in Genesis 3:10, when Yahweh goes into the garden and Adam and Eve had hidden, and Yahweh calls out, you know, where are you? And Adam's like, you know, we hid ourselves because we were what? Afraid, right? So you see that first, the consequence, you know, it's a natural consequence of sin. But then we also see fear defined in the Bible when we get into Deuteronomy. You know, fear comes as a punishment in Deuteronomy 28. And actually, we're just going to turn there for a minute, real quick. Deuteronomy 28, verse 66. And what does it say? Your life shall hang in doubt before you. Day and night you shall be worried and have no assurance of your life. In the morning you shall say, would that it were evening, and at evening you shall say, would that it were morning, because of the anxiety and dread of your minds and hearts and the sights which you shall see with your own eyes. That's under the curse. That's listed under the curses of Deuteronomy 28. So we see right there how fear is a curse. So what do we know as fear? You take the letters of the word fear, and we all have had this drilled into us forever, you know, false evidence appearing real. Fear is the opposite of faith. You can't be in faith and in fear at the same time. It just doesn't work. Most of the things that cause fear never even take place. We know that too. The majority of the things that, you know, the devil puts into your mind to be afraid of never even takes place. But that's just, you know, what we already know all about fear and stuff. But the question is, but what if you are actually in a real battle? What if you are actually faced with a fear that is real, like in Israel? There's a lot of people in fear because there is actually something taking place in Israel. How are you going to stand? What is your position going to be? How are you going to respond to it? All in how we respond to something dictates how the outcome is going to be. So who are you in the midst of fear? And that's what I wanted to talk about for a moment. So let's turn to Jeremiah 1:17. In Jeremiah chapter 1. Now, like I said, this is just like so strong on me. I was like, I'm going to just do my whole Bible study on Israel, you know, just because of what's going on. But these scriptures are for us and they're for Israel. Most importantly, they're for Israel right now. So in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 17, it says, but you, Jeremiah, gird up your loins. So in the face of fear, we need to gird up our loins. We need to remember who we are and whose we are. We need to remember that we are warriors in this army. We are warriors. Arise and tell them all that I command you. Do not be dismayed and break down at the sight of their faces. That could be a whole other sermon, okay? You don't get moved by the way people look. You don't get moved by their faces. But what does he say to them? You know, do not be dismayed and break down at the sight of their faces, lest I confound you before them and permit you to be overcome. So don't be dismayed by their faces, lest you be overcome by it. Well, what happens when you give into fear? You are being overcome by it. If you give into something that's causing fear in your life and you go with it, that fear is actually going to overcome you. But then he says, for I, behold, I have made you this day a fortified city. A fortified city and an iron pillar and bronze walls against the whole land. Now he's saying this to Jeremiah, okay? But this is for us too. He's saying, I've made you a fortified city. I've made you a fortified city and an iron pillar and bronze walls against the whole land. Now, what is he saying to Jeremiah? And against the kings of Judah, against its princes, against its priests, and against the people of the land. And in the Amplified it says, giving you divine strength which no hostile power can overcome. That's what Yahweh is doing for Israel. He's giving them divine strength that no hostile power can overcome. And that's one of the things we need to be decreeing over them. They have divine strength. And no matter what evil comes wrongfully against them, they will not be overcome by it. They have divine strength. Well, he's saying that to us too. You have divine strength to overcome whatever fear the enemy's trying to bring to you. And then verse 19. It's just like I said, I was so fighting about doing my whole Bible study about Israel because I read these things now, my mind's instantly on Israel. Well, look at verse 19. And they shall fight against you, but they shall not prevail against you. That's another. They shall fight against you, but they shall not prevail against you. For I am with you, says the Lord, to deliver you. So just like how this is for us, this is what he's saying for Israel. They shall fight against you, but they will not prevail. Why won't they prevail? Because they have the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob on their side. That's why the enemy will not prevail over Israel. But this is what our stance is supposed to be in the face of fear. We're supposed to be this fortified city. We're supposed to have, he will give us divine strength, which no hostile power can overcome. And how many of us have been in a fight? Not physically, but most of us, some of us have been in physical fights, but in a spiritual fight, a fierce battle. Well, what does he say? They shall fight against you, but they will not prevail against you, for I am with you. For I am with you, says the Lord. And we got to realize that he is with us. And when we are knowing who we are and whose we are, and we're in position, and we defeat fear once and for all, this is what will be in our lives. Fortified city. What does the word fortified mean? Well, fortified is provided with defensive works as protection against attack. So think of yourself, you're a fortified city, okay? I always think of, for some reason I think of Masada. Masada was this fortress, Well, think of yourselves as this fortified city. So what does that mean? You're provided with defensive works as protection against attack. All of us in here have been equipped with, been given, provided by him, defensive works as protection against attack. So when the enemy tries to come to an attack with something, we've already been fortified. We've already been provided with this as our defense, but also as our offense, so that we will overcome. It also means, and I thought this was interesting, fortified also means strengthened mentally or physically. How many in this day and age need to be strengthened mentally? Strengthened physically, that's important, but with everything that's going on, everything that the enemy is throwing at people, everything that we're seeing all across the world, we need to be strengthened mentally. If you're not strengthened mentally, you're no good for the kingdom. You're no good to be able to stand up against all the lies that are coming out about Israel. Or you're no good to stand up when, the enemy launches some attack at you and there's fear. But to be fortified, you're strengthened mentally or physically. The Latin root word for fortified is fortis, F-O-R-T-I-S, and it means to be strong. That's who he's calling us to be. For behold, I have made you a fortified city, so that you can overcome any attack of the enemy. And that's what he's saying to Israel. For I, behold, have made you, Israel, this day, today, a fortified city, giving you divine strength which no hostile power can overcome. And we know they're facing hostile powers, but it's not more powerful than our God. So a couple scriptures to go along with defeating fear for good. And if you want to just write them down, I'm just going to run through them. But Deuteronomy 31:6, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid and do not panic before them. For the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you. He will neither fail you or abandon you. Isaiah 41:10, don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. Isaiah 41:13 says, for I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand, saying to you, fear not, I will help you. Psalms 27:1 says, the Lord is my light and my salvation, so why should I be afraid? The Lord is my fortress, protecting me from danger, so why should I tremble? Psalm 55:22 says, give your burdens to the Lord, and he will take care of you. He will not permit the godly to slip and fall. That's a good one. He will not permit the godly to slip and fall. Psalms 118:6 says, the Lord is on my side, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Proverbs 29:25 says, the fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe. So think of that. The fear brings a snare. When you get taken captive by fear, it's like you're caught in a snare. Mark 5:36 says, do not be afraid, only believe. And interesting, in the Message Bible, when you actually go and look at Luke 8:50, and is when he was talking to Jairus, and the news comes to Jairus that his daughter has died, and we all know about that. And Yeshua overheard and said to Jairus, don't be upset, just trust me, and everything will be all right. That's the Message. Luke 8:50 in the Amplified says, do not be seized with alarm or struck with fear. Simply believe in me as able to do this, and she shall be made well. Okay? He's saying to him, just believe in me. Fear not. Believe in me, and all will be well. Everything is going to be all right. Philippians 4:6 says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. This is what our position is. This is who we're supposed to be. 1 John 14 says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. And Revelation 1:17 says, he laid his right hand on me, saying to me, do not be afraid. I am the first and I am the last. All right? But think of that one. The ones in Isaiah, he talks a lot about his right hand. And we know this is a whole separate thing, but there's power in his right hand. But here he says, he laid his right hand on me. He laid that power on me, saying, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. Some of these scriptures that I have here, they had been given to me a while back. I've mentioned it before. When Scott and I walked through something with Australia 4 or 5 years ago. And, as a parent, the devil will try to use your children to bring fear. As a parent, in the natural, I'm talking about in the natural, attacks could come and he will try to bring fear. But when you know who you are and whose you are, and you stand up against that and fight back and defeat it, there's nothing that the enemy can do. He could try to launch an attack, but when you're standing in a place of faith and refusing fear, I refuse to fear. I learned that. We've talked about it before, and I got that ingrained in me, and that whole story with Kelly Copeland with her daughter. And what does she turn and say to Terry? I refuse fear. The most powerful words that could have come out of Kelly's mouth at that moment: I refuse fear. And I remember our first night being in ICU and saying that out loud. It was just me and Australia in that room. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, not recalling where Scott had gone. But the enemy's just trying to bring all types of stuff. And I sat up and I was like, I refuse fear. I refuse fear. And I am so well trained by Mom that you don't look at what you see. You know, and it's almost like, and it's kind of the same experience that Mom had had with Ashley, but it's like, at that moment, I didn't see all the stuff. I didn't see all the tubes and all the things and Australia laying there not awake and everything. You know, I refused to fear. And, you know, I honestly can say that at that time, it was a fight. Because I was raised in a family where fear was a biggie. You know, we were afraid of everything. You know, the doors were locked and everything in the house and in the cars. And, you know, my family upbringing was a little bit different because I have a little bit of a different background in my family. So my father was big on, you know, watch your back when you're walking down the street and stuff like that. So fear was a big part of my life from a little girl growing up through into a young adult. And so when faced, you know, becoming a believer and faced with something, the natural reaction, the natural instinct was from before. You could feel that fear that you were taught, that you learned. It was a learned behavior. It was, you know, it's kind of like what Randy was talking about that night when he was talking, when he was here talking, and he was saying how certain families do things certain ways. So this one family, when they handle a situation this way and you saw it as a little child, that's what got ingrained in you and became like part of your DNA. You know, and if people don't believe that things can't be transferred through DNA, you best believe they can be, okay? They can be, but all of us that are believers have a different DNA now. And we have the power to break those curses. So, you know, growing up and all that and stuff, and then coming to a point of being a believer, it was like, whoa, this is a lot of work. Because you don't realize in the time how much there actually was until you become a believer and you look back and it's like, oh my goodness, there was a fear about that, and there was a fear about that. And some of it was the most ridiculous fear. You know, it's like, really? It's like, you know, lock us in the car at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, sitting in the CVS parking lot in, you know, not saying anything, but, you know, at the time we lived in Maine, so it's like rare for stuff like that to happen where we lived. It was a very safe place. But, you know, you're sitting locked in a car at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because you think a band of thugs are going to come and do whatever. Okay, irrational thinking. Totally, fear is like totally irrational. So I had a lot to learn. And I was a very blessed individual when faced with that situation with Australia. And it's not like I hadn't been faced with situations before with her, but that was the most fierce battle ever. And, you know, honestly, if I didn't have Mom by my side through that, I don't know if I would have been able to stand the way I did. And I know I've shared this in here before, but it's like having her there and feeding me with the texts and being on the phone with her and listening to everything that she was saying. And then verbally that night, you know, like I said, by myself in the middle of the night, that first night, Scott was somewhere, and I'm just alone in my room, in the room with Australia, you know, looking at her. And the enemy wanted to try to just bombard all types of thoughts about what was going on. But because of Mom, and because of what I've learned from her, and because of what I heard from Kelly Copeland, it was like, I refuse to fear. Now, did I just say it once? No, I said it quite a few times that first night. I refuse to fear. I refuse to fear. I have my eyes fixed on you, Yahweh, because I know what you promised me. You did not give me a child of promise to have something take place. Not that he caused it, because it wasn't him that caused it. We have a very real enemy that comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I had the promise that I had a child of promise, and the way that she even came about and stuff. And it's like, I refuse to fear. I refuse to fear. And the enemy bombarded even harder, because that's what he's going to do. And I just kept, I refuse to fear. I refuse to fear. But after 15, 20 minutes or so of I refuse to fear, there was like this power that was just starting to rise up inside of me. And I could feel the fear going and the shalom coming. You know? And it's just like, so anyways, I was saying all that to say, you know, when in the midst of something, you've got to have the words come out of your mouth. I refuse to fear. And we've got to start living the way Yahweh has called us to live. And we've got to start being in a place where we're defeating fear and not allowing fear to defeat us. So let's turn to Psalm 121 real quick. And I had read this on Sabbath, and Jordan had read it. You know, and my intent when I came in Sabbath morning, I was sharing this with Jordan, was just read Psalm 150. And all of a sudden I walked behind the bima, and it was like, no, you need to read Psalm 121. And I was like, okay. And he told me again tonight, read Psalm 121. You know, and Psalm 121 talks about us, and it talks about Israel. And this is another thing, we need to be decreeing over Israel every single day. But Psalm 121 in the Amplified says, I will lift up my eyes to the hill around Jerusalem, to sacred Mount Zion and Mount Moriah. From where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to slip or to be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. That is a psalm to have in your arsenal when fear is trying to come at you. Interesting, Psalm 121, verse 7 and 8, when COVID hit America, Holy Spirit had instructed me to decree that psalm every single day, that part of the psalm, 7 and 8, over myself and Scott and Azriela. And every single morning, I decreed and declared, Lord, you will keep Scott, Azriela, and I from all evil. You will keep us from the virus. You will keep our lives. You will keep Scott, mine's, and Azriela's going out and our coming in from this time forth and forevermore. It's a powerful, powerful scripture. And like I said, for me personally, that's what he had me do when COVID came. And I decreed and declared that every single morning, despite whatever. But so interestingly, to start to wrap up here, you know, I came across, like I said, this thing from Kenneth Copeland. And like I said earlier, how are we actually in a real battle? What is our stance? What is our position? Who are we in the midst of an attack? When fear comes. So he had this thing that was called the fear test. And it says, ask yourself, are you passing the fear test? How do you do it? You need to take authority over fear, trust in Yahweh's love and promises, keep the devil under your feet, starve fear, and feed your faith. So even from an early age, life is full of tests. Math tests, driving tests, aptitude tests, and countless others we all face at one point or another. A test is designed to measure performance, gauge understanding, and determine whether a person has mastered a particular skill. When it comes to our spiritual lives, we are not exempt from being tested. In fact, Satan throws out all kinds of tests or challenging circumstances, hoping we'll take the bait and give him access to our lives. Interesting. Satan throws out something to see if he'll take the bait. How many people actually take the bait? He knows what triggers you. He's not going to try something that would, never work, nothing that you've ever been accustomed to or whatever. He knows what he can use to, whether it is to get you angry or get you offended, to get you whatever, but he knows how to bait you to get you into fear. The Bible repeatedly commands us to not fear, which comes in the form of worry, anxiety, and various phobias. It is Satan's primary weapon, and he responds to it the way Yahweh responds to faith. He uses fear to challenge the promises of Yahweh and steal hope from believers. The fear test measures whether you're operating in the hope of Yahweh's word or not. If you're in fear, you're not in hope. If you're not in hope, you're not in faith. If you're not in faith, you're not in love. It's easy to see how Satan can use fear to hinder many Christian lives. So when the fear test comes to your life, do you pass or fail? If you haven't been making the grade in this area, test yourself in this, self-examine yourself, and then learn how to take authority over fear. Trust in Yahweh, keep the devil under your feet, starve fear, and feed your faith. So the first thing he says, are you taking authority over fear? Luke 10:19 says, I have given you authority over all the power of the enemy. Well, we know fear is one of the powers that the enemy tries to use. Have you ever heard someone tell you they have a healthy fear of something? Some people think fear is good, but what's good about it? The Bible says it's not of God, so it can't be good. It brings torment, not shalom, not wisdom or freedom. So the first question is, where are your fears coming from, and are you taking authority over them? If you grew up in a poor family, you might be in bondage to the fear of poverty. You might even try to apply the principles of God, but the devil will keep robbing you until you go before Yahweh, repent of that fear, and get rid of it. The same thing is true of sickness. If you're afraid of it, you can expect to be sick. The fear will produce the sickness. But if you take authority over your fear and the sickness, which are both from the enemy, you can trust in Yahweh's word, which says he has already healed you. It's made me think of so many times when I've heard stories about people that, just go to the doctor for a routine exam. They feel great. There's nothing going on in them. They go for a routine exam, and the doctor diagnoses them with cancer. They had no idea they had it. I heard of one individual that was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Up until that point, they were healthy and happy and living life and all this stuff. And they found out they had cancer. And instead of fighting against it, they allowed that fear to overcome them, and they were gone only in the matter of a couple weeks later. That's how dangerous fear is. Fear is it's a life stealer. And it's amazing how something like that can take place. And it's all down to fear. Perhaps you fear for the safety of your children, or you're constantly worried and full of anxiety. To pass the test, take authority over the fear by standing on Psalm 91 and many other promises of Yahweh that promise their well-being. Put your hope and faith in him. Ephesians 6:12 says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. So if you'll take authority over fear and break its power, the poverty, sickness, and failure that fear was designed to bring will never have the opportunity to manifest in your life. We got to take authority over fear. Yahweh designed us, created us to be fearless. He designed us, created us to be warriors, with, like I read in Jeremiah, that had divine power where no hostile, divine strength where no hostile power could overcome it. So the second one is, are you trusting in Yahweh's love? 1 John 4:18 says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. This verse clearly states that there is no fear in love. That sounds pretty simple. If you have love, you won't fear. But the Bible also says that Yahweh is love. So if you have Yahweh, you have love, which means you shouldn't have fear, right? But if you still have fear, the next question is, are you trusting in Yahweh's love? Kind of makes you think of, I think about the times, I think when Dad would do that falling back test. And it's like, why would Jordan do that? Because she had no fear. She knew that Dad, because he loved her, was going to catch her. He wasn't going to allow something to take place. Wasn't going to allow something to happen. Love is a powerful force. It causes our faith to work. It keeps us in line with the word of Yahweh, and it keeps us out of the devil's trap of fear. When you believe and trust the love Yahweh has for you, you won't be afraid. You won't be afraid, and you'll put your faith in his word. If you trust in his love for you, then you will believe that he wants to prosper you. You'll believe he'll heal your body. You'll believe that he'll protect your children. You will believe the love. That's why seeing yourself as being loved by Yahweh and trusting in that love is the first step to walking in love. It allows you to love others and drive out fear in your life. Are you fully persuaded? Romans 4:21 says, and being fully persuaded that what he had promised, he was able also to perform. Who did he say that to? Abraham. Abraham was fully persuaded that when Yahweh promised him a child, he was fully able to perform that. How do you know if you are fully persuaded of something? Is it because you think, feel, or wish to believe it? No. When you are fully persuaded of something, you can't be moved from it, no matter what anyone in the world says. There could be a new study and mass media coverage telling you that the sky is orange. Your neighbor could believe it, your friends could believe it, but it wouldn't change the fact that you know the sky is blue. All you have to do is look at it. I'd have to say there's something wrong with your neighbor if they believed that the sky was orange, looking at it, just saying. But what about things that you can't see in the natural? That's why we walk by faith and not by sight. That's what faith is about. Like the promises of Yahweh before they manifest. How can you become fully persuaded that the promises will come to pass? When you take a stand on Yahweh's word, Satan will immediately come and challenge those promises with every fear tactic he can come up with. He sends people who speak unbelief, circumstances that seem to be going in the opposite direction, bad reports, discouraging thoughts, you name it. But let's not forget for one moment that he's a liar. So the next question to pass on the fear test is, are you fully persuaded that what God has promised you will come to pass? If so, you won't be in fear. You won't quit when the devil throws tacks in the road. Why? Because you'll have hope. You'll have faith. You'll have the image on the inside of you that Yeshua said it, so you can have it, period. Are you giving the devil an inch? Timothy 1:7 says, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. The entire mission of Satan is summed up in 3 words: steal, kill, and destroy. That's why he uses the fear tactic so often. He will use thoughts and circumstances to see if he can get you to give him just an inch by causing you to be in fear. For example, sometimes people think it's harmless to worry. They even feel irresponsible if they don't. But worry is the same as fear. If you give the devil even an inch by worrying, he will plant that seed of fear in you. It will only grow, and it will only grow when you entertain his threats of the future and his boasts about the past. Before long, you will begin to believe Satan's lies rather than the truth of Yahweh's word. When a fear test like this comes, there's only one answer. Don't give fear a place in your life. If past mistreatment, failure, or unrealized manifestations are opening the door to fear, put them under the blood of Yeshua and wash them away forever. Start by saying, I refuse to fear. Make that declaration before the devil takes even an inch. Then say, devil, you're trying to put fear on me. I'm not going to accept that fear. Get out of here and don't come back. Are you feeding faith and starving fear? Philippians 4:6 says, don't be anxious about anything. If you've ever been to the zoo, you've likely seen a sign that says something like, don't feed the crocodiles. That should be common sense anyways, but, we do have interesting people in the world. Why? Because when you feed them, they become dangerous. The same is true of fear. Fear is only dangerous if you feed it. That's powerful. That's a powerful little nugget. Fear on its own, not doing anything, just sitting there, if you're not paying it any attention, not feeding it, can do nothing. But fear, when you feed it, is how it becomes dangerous. When you starve it, it becomes smaller and smaller until it doesn't even exist in your life. It works the same way with faith. In order to pass the fear test, you need to feed faith and starve fears. So the next question on the test is, how do you feed faith? With the word of Yahweh. Put it in your eyes and in your ears on a continual basis. Feed your spirit daily hot meals of Yahweh's word, just not one cold snack per week. Let his word become the final authority in every area of your life. Then think about what you're thinking about. Is what you're thinking about true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, and worthy of praise? If it is, the God of Shalom will be with you. When you're thinking on Yahweh's word instead of worrying about your circumstances, you're simultaneously feeding your faith and starving fear. How else do you starve fear? Refuse to feed it. The best food for fear is secular media, news, and people who speak fear and negativity. Remove these things from your life and go on a fear-free diet. Next, guard what you say. If you are believing for something, don't say anything contrary to the promises Yahweh has given you concerning it. Your objective is to keep your hopes up, not to tear them down and cripple your faith with negative, fear-filled words. Instead, speak Yahweh's promises in faith. That's the only thing that should be coming out of our mouth, is what Yahweh says about it. So how'd you do? Do you think you have what it takes to pass the fear test the next time the devil tries to steal your hope and challenge Yahweh's promises for your life? When you study these things, you will overcome and be able to resist fear. You'll pass the course with flying colors and be on to bigger and better things, like living life abundantly. So we need to make up our minds to be who Yahweh has called us to be and become a person who refuses to let fear rob us of the promises of Yahweh. That's who we're supposed to be. We need to stand up and refuse fear. We need to take our rightful positions knowing who we are and finally put fear in its place. So in closing, sometime this morning, Holy Spirit had just dropped it into me, and to read it and to close with it. But it's a song that we've been singing during praise and worship for the last few weeks. I'm not singing it at all. Just saying that could produce fear. Okay, but I'm going to read it, and it's Psalm 46. And he had also spoken this psalm to me where Israel is concerned. And like I said, I just can't put into words. I just can't put into words right now about Israel. It's just been like, I'm sure for most of us, it's just been every waking moment, it's been Israel. You know, wake up during the middle of the night and it's Israel. But anyways, I can't go too much into that because then we'll be talking about a whole other thing. So Psalm 46, I'm going to read it to you out of the Amplified first. Psalm 46. Remember, this is him talking to us too. This is exactly him talking to us too. Yahweh is our refuge and strength, mighty and impenetrable to temptation, a very present and well-proved help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear. Though the earth should change, and though the mountains be shaken into the midst of the seas, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling and tumult, Selah, pause and calmly think of that. There is a river whose streams shall make glad the city of Yahweh, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. Yahweh is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. Yahweh will help her right early at the dawn of the morning. The nations raged, the kingdoms tottered and removed. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge, our fortress and high tower. Come, behold the works of the Lord, who has wrought desolations and wonders in the earth. He makes wars to cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow into pieces and snaps the spear in two. He burns the chariots in the fire. Let be and be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge, our high tower and stronghold. Selah. Pause and calmly think about that. That is who our God is. And that is who the God of Israel is. But I wanted to read it to you out of the Voice translation. different translations have different flavors to them and adds more power and stuff to it. So the voice in Psalm 46 says, Yahweh is our shelter and our strength. When troubles seem near, Yahweh is nearer, and he's ready to help. So why run and hide? No fear, no pacing, no biting fingernails. When the earth spins out of control, we are sure and fearless. When the mountains crumble and the waters run wild, we are sure and fearless. Even in heavy winds and huge waves, or as mountains shake, we are sure and fearless. A pure stream flows, never to be cut off, bringing joy to the city where Yahweh makes his homes, the sacred site where the Most High chooses to live. The true God never sleeps and always resides in the city of joy. He makes it unstoppable, unshakable. When it awakes at dawn, the true God has already been at work. Trouble is on the horizon for the outside nations. Not long until kingdoms will fall. Yahweh's voice thunders and the earth shakes. You know the Eternal, the commander of heavenly armies, surrounds us and protects us. The true God of Jacob is our shelter, close to his heart. Come, gaze, fix your eyes on what the Eternal can do. Amazing. He has worked desolation here on this battlefield earth. He can stop wars anywhere in the world. He can make scrap of all weapons, snap bows, shatter spears, and burn shields. Be still. This is what we need to be saying all over Israel. Be still. Be calm. See and understand that I am the true God. I am honored among all the nations. I am honored over all the earth. You know the Eternal, the commander of heavenly armies, surrounds us and protects us. The true God of Jacob is our shelter, close to his heart. That is who our God is. And that is who the God of Israel is. But just to leave you, the song, every time I read that song just goes in my head all the time. And that was such a powerful song to come to us when we were down at COFI and they sang that for the first time. But the main part that I want you to leave with is when we sing that song in the sanctuary, the Lord of hosts is with us. The Lord of hosts is with Israel. The Lord of hosts is with us. He's with us in the fire. He's with us as a shelter, with us in the storm. He will lead us through the fiercest battle. Oh, where else would we go but with the Lord of hosts? Amen. Well, thank you all of you for joining us out there on Facebook. I hope you gathered something from tonight, and we will see you on Sabbath at 11 a.m.